Where to begin? Well, that's the question, isn't it? Once you've got yourself going, it's okay, but how to get there often puzzles me. I don't know until I know, and by that time, I've forgotten that I didn't know to begin with. This only becomes problematic once I return to the first state of not knowing, because in that state I've forgotten that it is there where my ideas can flow and form into something more stable. From chaos comes order, and sometimes order forms chaos, which forms, well, it's a whole messy loop. So, essentially, the start, which isn't a good description because there'll always be some influence from my past, is full of uncertainty, and well, that's kind of a good thing. I find that I have to trust in my kind of chaos to amalgamate into the base of my work. If I do it enough, it becomes an instinct, a learnt chaos. Research can mean so many different things, but to me it only means one: experiences. The experience of reading, the experience of writing, the experience of seeing an exhibition, the experience of watching, listening, taking part in anything and everything, or just the simple experience of everyday life. They all feed my flow of creativity in their own ways, and whether I'm aware of it or not. Actually forming something outside of my mind. This is hard. The endless pool of my mind can sometimes feel impossible to form into something real and tangible. So many aspects of my work and ideas just float around in their own separate bubbles, swirling and swerving around each other, but never quite touching. From this soup, I will begin drawing out my thoughts into writing, which for me solidifies the past so I can progress to something new and interesting. This is the first step of actualizing my ideas and thoughts. Although at this stage they are still separate with their bubble boundaries, it allows me to break them down into their separate qualities, which most likely have some similarities to each other. Writing too much can also mean too much thinking and not enough doing. If this happens, then I start flicking through my ideas, testing them out in my head, without actually doing the experiments. The problem with this is the obvious lack of experience. I don't know until I try, I can only guess. So I write until I have the simplest outline of what I am interested in, the ways it has affected me, and finally how it can affect my work. It is then that I swiftly move on to the sometimes seemingly aimless and slightly rambling experiments which will develop my work. Experimentation is key to progression, which may or may not be your aim for your work, but nevertheless seems to happen through process. Any process usually works because it will lead to something interesting, that will lead to something else, and so on, until I realize I've got myself rolling and I can see the finish line. However, as I'm pulling myself along the rambling, chaotic road of discoveries, it can be easy to hit a bump, which I do too often. At this point, a change of direction along a parallel or diverted path of investigation usually helps my mind get back on track. It is too easy to get bored of something, so giving myself a new line of thought or production will see me to the other side. In the midst of all of this, I find myself thinking about all the failed experiments. Not that an experiment can fail if its purpose is to determine if something works or not, but they are essential to getting to the point of resolved or finished work. Simply jumping to the end doesn't have the same effect. It's the material and physical research that progresses it. I have to tick off all the possibilities before deciding on the right combination. So, essentially, that's how I research. That's my methodology behind my work and processes. Everyone works differently, and this is what works for me.